Yo,
Hello.
Perfect. Yeah, we're connected. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you really well. So, if you're ready, we can start.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Hello, dear viewers. Today, my guest is an incredible Swedish and American actor, Peter Stormare. Hello, Peter.
Howdy, protein shake.
Which taste?
I don't know, berry, strawberries, soy milk, soy protein, and blueberries, and coconut flakes.
Yeah, healthy. Good for you.
Yeah,
So,
it's good for me.
all right. So let's start with the first question. So, unfortunately, more than 2 years have passed since the beginning of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. And what do you think about this?
I think it's a shame, and I think it's, well, Russia or the old Soviet Union has been a horrible place for 10,000 years. And I don't know what's going on in the mind of regular Russian people. I'm angry that it's no protest, not in New York, not in Paris. There's no Russians out in the streets saying, stop it, stop it. I have some Russian people here in West Hollywood, where I live. We have Russian people here, and some of the people I talk to, they say, we like Putin, we like Putin. It's incredible. I wish that some of the Russians that live in Europe and live in the US and wherever they live, that they were out in the streets saying, stop it, Putin, stop it, stop the war, stop embarrass us peace-loving Russians, stop imprison, stop killing people, stop killing our own people, stop killing the Ukrainians. And I think Ukraine has been so close to Sweden. Poland and Ukraine was part of Sweden at one point. So that's why you look very Scandinavian. So there must have been some Vikings there. So we have a lot of connection. We have the same flag, more or less.
Yeah.
So Sweden has been good now, taking a lot of refugees from Ukraine, but that doesn't really help. Ukraine is a much smaller country than Russia. It's embarrassing that the EU doesn't do more. The EU should go there and say, enough is enough, Putin. Stop the war. Let's draw the border here. Give the Crimea back and leave. Take care of Siberia and the eastern part of Russia that Putin is putting people in prison camps, and in the Gulag is still up and running in Russia. And he's a dictator, and he's an unbelievable evil person in my point. He tries in some respect to restore the imperial idea that died with England 100 years ago. And it will never, it's just gonna fire back at him with all the civil wars. We don't hear about the civil wars in all the different regions that are going on in Russia. But people are rising up and kicking out the Russians. But, you know, they become executed, they go to jail, the families are being tortured. It is a very, very horrible situation. So that's my take. I'm not a racist, but I do dislike the Russians that are rooting for Putin and say this is a good thing. They don't deserve anything than a big fat slap on the behind.
But I agree with all your words which you have said, and on my behalf, thank you very much for these words, because usually you don't get to hear this very often, especially from Europeans or, for example, from people from America. So thank you very much for saying this. It means a lot.
Absolutely.
It means a lot. So,
I mean, in Sweden, why aren't the Russians living in Sweden out in the streets saying, "Stop the war, Putin"? You're a disgrace for the Russian people. I don't know why they're not out there saying anything.
yeah, and not only in Sweden, like there are, I think, all countries where they live, they don't do
Yeah,
anything.
no.
Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about your childhood. So you were born in Kumla in Sweden. And what was your childhood like there, and who were your parents?
I was born because my father was working and my mother was pregnant. So it was just a fluke that I was born in this place called Kumla. And I'm an honorary citizen, but I think I was there only for a couple of months before my father went back to further up north. And that's sort of where I grew up in a place called Arbro, and it's like 6-7 hours away from the place I was born. But it just happened that my mother was pregnant, and I showed up in that place. But I grew up in northern Sweden. There's a lot of snow. It's very cold and very depressing. But as long as you're a kid, it's fun with a lot of snow and you don't care about the weather. But when you turn 15, 16, you get very, very tired. You start saying, what the hell, is this my future? Am I going to live like this forever? So, and my father was a inventor. So he worked for a small company, but he also worked on his own, selling products. So he was traveling all over the world, mainly Europe and US. But, you know, it's from him. I got it in my blood. I call it TNT, explosive. So it was all his stories about the world out there that he's seen. You know, he said, get out. And he also said, Sweden is too close to Russia. We don't think we're communists over here, but the regime is a communist regime, and we're brainwashed. So when you get old enough, just leave as fast as you can. So, and they lived abroad in Africa, in the US, and that's how I got my inspiration. He returned to Sweden, you know, when he was in his late 60s, and he died, you know, 70 years old, too early for him. But he had a really interesting life, and he really planted in me, get out to the world and see what it is out there. And because of airplanes and everything, it was easier than 1,000 years ago when they had to walk or use a horse. So he planted that in me. It's too close to Russia, Sweden, and the world is so much bigger. In Sweden, we think we're the center of the universe, but we're not. We're just a little duck pond, just a little tiny little lake. And we think we're in the middle of the universe, but we're not. Travel, get out, find jobs in other countries. So that's what it was.
So yeah, you attended the Royal Dramatic Theatre in Stockholm, where you studied acting. And
Yeah.
have you always dreamt of connecting your life with the stage and cinema and such a success on it?
No, my story is very bizarre because I grew up in it's a small village where I grew up. And it's 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
We had a movie theater, and I love to go and see movies. And I loved to be. I was a dreamer. I was a lonely young kid. I loved to be in a dark closet listening to AM radio and listen to stations all over the world. My father had given me a radio like I could listen to, there wasn't any police where I grew up, so I couldn't listen to the police radio, but to ships out in the Baltic and to airplanes, I could listen to a lot of conversation in different languages. And that's where I was dreaming all the time. And I knew that I wanted to leave the village at the age of 5, 6 years old. And I told my parents, I'm going to live in the US and I'm going to work with movies. But I had no interest of acting. And if you said in my village you were into acting or you were interested in ballet and poetry, they would roll you in tar and feathers and you would be bullied in school.
Oh.
So I kept it to myself, and I didn't see a play until I was 20 years old. I came down to Stockholm and I saw theater for the first time, and that's how I got interested in theater. And then I got into the drama school, thank God, and a couple of years later, I was an actor on that stage, the National Theatre of Sweden, based in Stockholm. But I started working behind stage with props, and that gave me a great experience. And then when I got into the Royal Academy of Acting, I continued to work on any day that I had off and I could make some money. I needed money. And I still worked at the theater. And then after 3 years of training to become an actor, I was hired. It was very confusing for the people. For me, it was a dream come true to come back to the theater where I worked like 5 years behind stage and come back. But I think for many of my colleagues, male colleagues, it was kind of strange. You're the guy who used to serve me before I went onto stage, and now you're an actor and you're doing big parts. I'm supposed to do the big parts. And I came, no, I'm going to do the big parts. I was lucky. It was good timing. But I didn't know anything when I was young. I was a loner. I was dreaming a lot. I want to just travel into the universe. I was dreaming about meeting aliens, going in UFOs, looking into the stars, checking for satellites. And I was brought up with an occult mother, and she was psychic. So everything was possible in my world. And my mother let me be a little strange. But I didn't grow up and I didn't participate in theater, at school or anything. That was only gay guys who could do theater. So when you grow up in a small village, you have to be exactly like everybody else. Otherwise, you get beaten up.
Yeah, but I think it's not only in the village, in a lot of places. Yes, this is
Yeah,
the
but it's
case.
easier. When I moved down to Stockholm, it was easier. I could be dressed as I wanted to be dressed. Nobody cared really. It was nice to finally be who I wanted to be.
Yeah, but that's cool. Your first film role was in the famous director Ingmar Bergman's film Penny O. Alexander in 1982. Please tell us about this first experience of yours and about working with this outstanding director with whom you subsequently collaborated for 15 years.
It was a very small part. I only had a couple of lines, but it was great to be together with him and to see all the great actors in that movie and to be seated together with actors in that movie and talk to them. And I was not the walk-on, an extra. I was sort of an actor, but maybe I had, in the long version, that is 6 hours, maybe I have 5 lines, and it's mostly yes, sir, no, sir, thank you. I need to go, yes, sir, no, sir. It was small, but it was great to see him work, and we had a big fight,
Oh, really?
actually. Yeah. But that big fight ended in that he came over to me and more or less hugged me and said, you're right, let's do it your way. Let's do it your way. And I'm cool with it. So, because I said, I can't do it like this. I know I don't want to do it like that. It's so stupid. It's too long of a story. Well, he got really angry at me first. And then I said, but Mr. Bergman, it's because of this and this. I can't go into the details, but I can't. It's better that my colleague, the other guy, that he says the line and I just walk out of here, and he got really angry. But then he took a minute walking around. He came over to me and just said, let's do it your way. Let's try that. So that was the first meeting, and that, was a thing that I think he liked me from that moment, because I had said something and I stood up for it, and it became much better. The scene became much better. And from then on, we became pretty good friends. It was just a little minor thing, and if he could have easily said, "Get out of here, you're fired." So I knew during that 1 minute when he walked all by himself, all the extras, all the actors, they disappeared. It was only me and him. I'm standing in the middle of a big, big room. And he walked around and came over to me, and I thought, this is the end of my career. I just finished the Academy of Acting, and I'm going back to work as a mailman up in my small village. But he said, let's do it your way. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. But he didn't know my name by then. He didn't even say Peter. I was just an extra, with a couple of lines. But that bonded us, and I think he liked it. And later on, when we worked together, if we had some other people sitting there, he said, tell the story about me when I was so angry at you. And I had to tell the story. He liked that story.
No, but that is really impressive that he listened to you, and in the end they did, like you said.
Yeah, I was like 23 years old or something, 22, 24 years old. And my career was over, maybe. But it went the other way, thank God.
Yeah. In 1993, you moved to New York, where you appeared in English productions. In 1996, you played your first notable role in Hollywood as a killer in the Coen Brothers' Fargo. You also starred in the films The Big Lebowski in 1997, Armageddon in 1998, in which you played brilliantly the role of Russian cosmonaut. By the way, these films were really popular in Ukraine. You also said that you dreamt of going to US, and your father said that you should see the world. So did you go to America by invitation or as a free agent and make your very impressive way there on your own?
I was working at the National Theatre in Sweden, and I always, there was something called the Swedish American Institute, where you can get a grant. And when I finished the Academy of Acting 80, then I applied and I got it, and I got the grant to go over to the US and study for 1 year. But I couldn't go because I got the job at the National Theatre again in a play. So I couldn't go. I applied for 5 years, and I think I got it all the time, but I couldn't go. But then working with Bergman opened up a big door, as for many of his actors, because we toured every production of him, toured the world to festivals, you know, from, I hate to say it, but, you know, from Moscow to China to Japan, all over the world, to the US, throughout all of Europe. And we went to US a couple of times. And my first time out, we went with a play called Miss Julie, and we played it in Los Angeles for 2 weeks at the Doolittle Theater that I pass now and then. And I pray when I come to it, I pray and say thank you, because when we performed there, I met a lot of agents, and I found one agent, Gene Prasadian. He's passed away now, but he took me on. He said, become one of my clients. And from there on, from 86, 87, I had an agent. So I really moved to New York, I can say 87, 88. I had a little place I sublet from a friend. So I went over for auditions, I went over for meetings. A lot of things sounded great, but nothing really happened. But in 89, I got my first play, and a play, Rasputin, you know, the crazy monk.
Yeah.
And it made quite a success off Broadway. It made quite a success. And then I got another agent, Sam Cohen, a legendary American. He's dead and gone now. God bless him. He took me on, and he had, you know, all the big stars and little me. But if I didn't have money for rent and stuff, he always gave me some money, like they did in the good old days, and wouldn't do that today. But I was lucky by the end of the 80s, 1990, and to find a place and to pay my bills, and he was very helpful. But Bergman, sort of, without Ingmar and doing a lead in a play like Miss Julie, I would never have come maybe to, I would have gotten here one way or another. But that was a really great way to come, because every day after the performance, there was other agents handing me business cards. Call me, call me, call me. I had a lot of meetings, but I ended up with Gene Prasadian, and he was really good. He got me jobs and got me to meet really casting people and to meet directors. And then I got more stage jobs over in the US, and I did some smaller independent movies. But then the first movie I did that was big was in 89, 90, called Awakenings, when I worked with Robin Williams for a couple of days, and Robert De Niro. And so for me, it was fantastic to see these two legends and to be in a official Hollywood movie. And that opened up some doors too. And that was 89, 90, in the winter of 89 and 90. So that was my first really break. And then with Fargo came an even bigger break, because that became such a big success. And yeah, then it's been just rolling for 40 years, 35 years of doing a lot of crazy stuff, and a lot of smaller. I like smaller projects. I don't want to do big leading parts. I want to do 6, 7 different things every year, from TV to movies. No stage anymore. I've done a couple of things on stage, but stage is very, very hard. It's a craft that I did it for 10, 11 years with Bergman. Every night. So I've done thousands and thousands of performances. So That's enough. That's what most Americans, they don't do that during a lifetime, what we do in Europe, because you have a repertoire theater. So you do like, I had like 3 big leading parts. And then you know, on Tuesday, Wednesday, you do one. And then on Thursday, Friday, you do another part. And then during the weekend, you do another part. You've got to have 3 leading parts in your head. And then every morning you rehearse something else. So it's a very, it's very hard on the brain. And every time the curtain goes down, you walk off stage and say, shit, that wasn't good enough today. I wasn't good enough. It becomes a little bit of negativity. It comes with acting. You're never satisfied. There might be some people that walk off stage every night and say, fuck, I was so good today. I love myself. But most actors I talk to, actresses, they say it's the same problem when you're on stage. You're never really satisfied. You always walk off with a little bit of a negative attitude. It might go away after a while, but then every morning you wake up 7 o'clock. It's my voice. My voice is not good today. So being on stage and especially doing big parts, it is very hard. And everybody wants to do the bigger parts. Yeah. But at one point I said, geez, I just want to do a little small little thing, so I can just go in and out.
To talk less.
Yeah, and but I also now been offered, I just turned down a thing on Broadway because I've done Broadway. I've been offered a thing on West End in London. I've been offered a couple of things, but I say no, because it is very, very hard work. And I like to do this last chapter of my life and career. I want to concentrate on what I really want to do. My own writing, my own little movies, my own short movies, and to be part of producing and helping young directors to do a movie. And the last chapter is sort of dedicated to myself.
But before we are coming to the next chapter, so back to the end of millennium. So after the millennium, you were already a real star and acted for many prominent directors together with stars of the first range. This list of movies is very long, but for our viewers, I will name some of them. So it is Minority Report in 2002, Constantine in 2005, Henry's Crime in 2010, and many others. And can you remember any funny stories with you or other participants behind the scenes?
Not really. There's one, I don't know if they're funny, but I always try to create characters and defend my characters. But this goes back to Armageddon, but it happened in other movies too. That because of Bruce Willis was busy with another movie, so we started to shoot Armageddon on the date we were supposed to shoot. And they said, oh, Bruce Willis can't come. He's still on the other movie and they're going over for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So Michael Bay said, we have to start shooting. Everybody's on contract. The leading star might not show up for 2 weeks. So let's do all the scenes when he's not present. So it was most about me, the Russian cosmonaut in the space station. And now I'm a Russian. I like to mock the Russians. But the Lev is a real person who was up there for 18 months. And it's based on a real cosmonaut. After 2 weeks or something, Bruce Willis came, and one of our first scenes together was, because they are supposed to get fuel from this Russian cosmonaut in the International Space Station. They need fuel for the Challenger to take him to the asteroid. And we have a quarrel. And the whole scene ends with me saying, you know, winning. I say, you know, I got the uncle in Kiev who makes GPS on missiles, and he will make one that will hit your head. So you can find your head, bing, and you're gone. And then he said, well, I'm from Texas, you know, and in Texas we got shotguns, and I'm gonna shoot your fucking uncle from Kiev. And then I said, but you know, I have another uncle in Vladivostok. He makes also GPS for missiles, and those missiles are really, really strong. It's going to blow up your house and everything, and you're gone, your family, everybody's gone. And he said, well, they're not going to. And then I said, I'm sorry, Mr. Willis. That was the first day me and Bruce Willis had a scene together. I had met him in another movie before, but just briefly in a couple of scenes. But he said to me, well, I gotta have the last word here. And I said, Michael Bay. So Michael came running, and he said, I gotta have the last word here because he's threatening me. So I got, you know, we are Americans, you know, we have shotguns and stuff. And I said to him, Mr. Willis, can I have a word with you in private? So we went to the side into the darkness. This was all on the sound stage where everything was built. So I go in, you know, so no one else can hear. I said, we've been shooting now for 2 weeks, and we're like a football team. We're really, you know, glued together, all of us in Armageddon. This is your first day. This scene, I'm supposed to give you gas and gasoline so you can go to the asteroid. So if you piss me off, I'm not going to give you the gasoline. So the scene is written that I have the last word. When you threaten me, I'm going to threaten you with something that is so bizarre that I have an uncle in Kiev that can do GPS so precise. So wherever you are in the world, it will hit you in the head. And I said, that is the premise of this scene, Mr. Willis. So if you top me, then I have to go say another line. And if you top me, then I have to go like this until I win. We can improvise for an hour, but I will continue until I win. And he looked around and looked at me, and he said, okay, I understand. You're right. You have to win this. So let's do it that way.
Again.
Yes, so that is also, he could have reacted in a different way, but Bruce Willis, I always liked him as an actor, and also as he was a friend for a while, you know, and then we lost contact, but I always liked him, and he did a lot of great movies. Unfortunately, he's very sick now. But at that point, too, in Armageddon, by telling this is not about measuring our penises, you know, and you are the star. I know you're the star of the movie. You're getting paid a lot of money. I get a little bit of money. But this scene, I have to win. Otherwise, I won't give you the gas for your trip. And he understood, and we became very close after that. He really respected me. And Michael Bay was very happy. He was just very nervous for what Bruce Willis would do in the movie. But always be honest and always talk about your character. Don't just think about me to get screen time or to look good. it is about a character, and the scenes have a reason why they are there, whether they are badly written or good, but they are there for a reason. Sometimes if they're really bad, you can cut them and come up with something else. But usually when you start shooting, the scripts are in pretty good order. And we improvised in Armageddon a lot, and I like to improvise. And a lot of writers and directors like when it becomes alive. When you add a line, all of a sudden, you know, like improvised, it ignites the whole room. So, you know, you get something unique. And that's something I do occasionally. And I always got respect. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it's good to try at least.
And I wanted to sing you a song, so that's why we
Yes,
will come to this. I think you waited for it. So it is
yes,
it is a song by Rammstein, but it is translated in Ukrainian, because you also starred in his music video. So, and the
yes,
song is called Sonne, the sun. So yeah, I will
yes.
sing a small part of it. So yeah. Ця палка вогненна куля, спопелиться дай лиш волю, не намагайся, не втечеш, цей вогонь не знає меж, дим свідомий, жар на шкіру, кожен з нас подоба звіру, кожен атом спалахне, весь світ відлік раз почне, і сходить сонце. І світить сонце, і його велич скрізь засяє, знов сходить сонце, і як он die Sonne, і як он die Sonne, sie ist der hellste Stern von allen. Hier kommt die Sonne. Yeah, so that was it.
Well, you have a beautiful voice. Do you sing with a band?
No, I don't sing with a band, but I sing on my own. So, and I
Yeah.
hope in the future, yeah. So I will
Yeah.
write my own songs and then.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So let's pray and stand with Ukraine. And I hope that the Russian people will stand up and say, enough, Putin, enough. Don't do this to our people. We are struggling, we are starving, we're killing our young men, and we're killing men in Ukraine. This is crazy. It's 2024. Let's take each other's hands and unite in peace. So prayers to you and your people, and we are forever bonded because, as I said, we have the same flag.
Yeah.
More or less. It's very hard in sports when you see somebody, yes, yes, oh, they were from Ukraine. Yes. It's great. Thank you very much. And thank you to your audience and everybody listening in. Please stand up for Ukraine. And if you have Russian friends, tell them, why don't you protest? Why don't you say anything? That's what I say to the people I meet here. Why don't you take to the streets and say, Putin, stop this craziness?
Yeah. Thank you for your words, and thank you very much for this interview. So it will end in a couple of seconds, but thank you very much for talking with me today. Yeah. And
finally we met. Finally we met. Thank you, doll. Thank you. Now you know where to find me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope we will meet someday. So in real life, and yeah. Thank you very much. We are waiting for you after the war in Ukraine.